We are exactly 3 weeks away from the 2021 NFL draft. And this is the first mock draft that I am doing since we received the news that Sam Darnold has been traded to the Carolina Panthers. So, what we saw early this week with Sam Darnold being traded to the Panthers is it has a huge impact on the draft 3 weeks from now. So I'm going to quickly get right into this. I want to welcome you all to my NFL mock draft 6.0, and I'm not going to waste any more time because we do know the first couple of picks here for the NFL draft. We know that Lawrence will go 1 to Jacksonville. The Jets, now that they've traded Sam Darnold, I'm almost 100% certain that they will go with Wilson out of BYU. And some can argue that the draft will begin at pick 3 with San Francisco. But I think that it may really begin with Atlanta at 4. Because there has been rumors that the 49ers, they are looking at Mac Jones. And I think Mac Jones, I think the 49ers is one of those few fits for Mac Jones. And I know some have labeled him as a bust because Alabama quarterbacks, they don't historically do well in the NFL. But I think with Mac Jones being coached under Kyle Shanahan, one of the best offensive minds in the National Football League, screens potential there. So I got the Niners going with Mac Jones. So now this is where I feel like the NFL draft is really going to begin. The Atlanta Falcons at pick number 4. Now the Falcons, they have many needs. They can go with the quarterback, or they can go with maybe Penei Sewell out of Oregon. They could go with Kyle Pitts, the tight end of Florida, which tight end, it may not be the biggest need, but I think it's going to be a top need eventually because Hayden Hurst, I don't think Atlanta wants to keep Hayden Hurst as tight end 1 for much longer. I feel like that Hayden Hurst was only brought into Atlanta out of desperation because, remember, the Falcons basically let Austin Hooper walk in free agency last season, and I think they desperately needed a tight end, and they just chose Hayden Hurst out of desperation. They gave up a second-round pick for Hurst. So I think it wouldn't be a bad thing if the Falcons went with Pitts here at 4. Although there have been rumors that have been intensifying throughout maybe the last 48 hours on how the Falcons, they are looking to trade down for number 4. So you got to weigh out the options here. If the Falcons do trade down, are they really not looking for a quarterback this season? Do they think that Matt Ryan has at least 4 or 5 more years left in him? Do they go with Micah Parsons at 9? Because I think the Broncos is the ideal suitor here for the Falcons to trade that pick with. I could see the Broncos going from 9 to 4. But I think if a trade like this were to happen, it wouldn't be until draft night. Because if you look at the teams later on in this draft, the Bengals, they're good with Joe Burrow. Dolphins, they're good with Tua. The Lions have Jared Goff now. The Panthers have Sam Darnold. The Broncos, they're not, I wouldn't say they're completely sold on Drew Lock as their franchise quarterback. The Cowboys, they just gave Dak an extension. I mean, the Giants, it could be a little bit of a reach, but I think they're going to give Daniel Jones at least 1, maybe 2 more seasons. The Eagles, they've already, I think they're settling in at 12. I don't think they're going to surprise everybody and just go from 12 to 4 because the Eagles, I think they know they're in a rebuild process. Chargers are good with Herbert. I mean, the Vikings, maybe they're not sold on Kirk Cousins. New England could be an ideal situation as well because Cam Newton, he's only there for 1 year, and it's a 1-year deal for a reason. But I am going to say that with the 4th pick, they will go with Kyle Pitts out of Florida if they stay at 4. But I think the pick could be Sewell. I mean, they could take Lance or Fields here because both are still available at this point. And My goal is to have at least one mock draft, at least a week until the draft. So about maybe 3 more mock drafts after this. So I'll probably have most likely maybe a different prospect in every mock draft from here on out because I think it's unpredictable what the Falcons will do. But I think it'll be Kyle Pitts. I think you just got to, in my mind, take one of the best players available at this point. When you have a top 5 pick and you have, I'd say, a solid quarterback in Matt Ryan, and I think he does have 4 or 5 more years left in him. Arthur Smith is already said that he's excited to work with him in 2021. At the same time, though, they attended Trey Lance's pro day, and I don't remember which analyst said this, but Trey Lance reminds of Ryan Tannehill, which is interesting because Arthur Smith was the guy that turned around Ryan Tannehill's career in Tennessee. So that could be something to think about as well. Now, the Bengals, this is really the pick that I've had him throughout the majority of the mock draft process. Jamar Chase out of LSU. I just think it's simple that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they trust each other really well. They won a championship together. They have the chemistry. I think that makes Joe Burrow a much better quarterback. And it honestly makes Joe Burrow a really good fantasy option for 2021 because he would have targets in Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins. Next, we got the Dolphins on the clock. At 6, they moved down from pick 3. So I'm going to think that they will go with Penei Sewell here. And I know they have some needs around the defense, but I think when you have a generational talent in Penei Sewell, because Penei Sewell is the best offensive tackle prospect that I've ever seen. So the Dolphins, in this situation, you're essentially getting Penei Sewell. You can even get Jamar Chase potentially almost for free because the Dolphins don't lose anything from moving down from 3 to 6, which when they're getting Sewell, and it's just a bunch to gain here for Miami. So I think they take advantage of Sewell being on the board still, and they go with him at 6. Number 7, we got the Lions. And I think the Lions, I think that they are going to try to improve that secondary, or they're going to go with a wideout here. I think it could be Devontae Smith here. I do guarantee, though, that it's going to be either wide receiver, it's going to be Surtain. I think it'll be Devontae Smith. I just think that when you got a newer quarterback in your system in Jared Goff, I think it's best to load him up with as many targets as you can. And Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner, he's got championship pedigree that the Lions, they are in desperate need of. Next, we got the Panthers. And I think the Panthers, now that they have their quarterback and they have signed A.J. Bouye, I think they're going to address their offensive line. I think they'll go with Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern. I just think this is the thing of the Panthers addressing one of their biggest needs. I think their biggest need right now, because they've signed Bouye, they've got Darnold, their quarterback. Best to get the next best offensive tackle prospect to protect Sam Darnold, because Sam Darnold just needs some time, in my opinion. And Sam Darnold, he has better targets right now in Carolina when he hasn't even taken a snap with this Panthers offense than what he ever had with the Jets. So next we got the Broncos in the clock. And I think the Broncos, they are going to go with Micah Parsons. I think this could change on draft night. I'm not really sure what the Broncos might be thinking with Lance and Fields still on the board at this point. Maybe they will take a chance on Justin Fields. Maybe they are certain that Drew Lock isn't their guy. But I think Micah Parsons, I think he's the best defensive prospect in this draft class. And Micah Parsons did opt out of the 2020 season, didn't play at all in 2020. And there were rumors about him being involved in a fight at Penn State where Coach James Franklin told a player to not talk to the police about it because Micah Parsons was involved in it. There's an article on ESPN, I believe, on that. So if you want to look at that. Next, we got the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys simply addressing your biggest need, and that's the secondary. So Patrick Surtain out of Alabama. Next, we've got the Giants at pick number 11. And I think they follow suit with the Cowboys and go with the corner. So I think they're going to go with J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. I could see this pick being Caleb Farley, but Caleb Farley, I think his stock is falling a bit. I think that Farley will probably be taken here pretty soon in the draft, but I think it's not as big of a drop. I think it's a bit. Like, I think it's possible that he'll be taken within these next few picks, possibly. Next, we got the Eagles at 12. And the Eagles simply addressing your biggest need, a wide receiver. So I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle to the Eagles at pick 12. Give Jalen Hurts a target, or whoever your quarterback's going to be in 2021. Next, we've got the Chargers on the clock. And I think it's going to be a theme here going on. I think since we didn't really have a combine, we only really have pro days to look at. I think a lot of these teams, they're just going to go with some of their bigger needs in the first round, kind of like what we saw last year. I think most of these teams are going to stick to their boards and maybe go with their first or second biggest need, like the Chargers here. And I think they're going to go with Christian Darrisaw, the offensive tackle out of Virginia Tech. Next, we have the Vikings. And I think the Vikings, this could be an opportunity here to find a potential successor to Kirk Cousins. And I think when you have Trey Lance and Justin Fields still on the board, I think the Vikings are going to go with Justin Fields, the quarterback out of Ohio State. This does seem bold here, but I just don't think the Vikings, I don't think that Kirk Cousins is the long-term answer in Minnesota. I really don't. So I think the Vikings will take advantage of their choice between these two quarterbacks, and we'll see if they make the right choice here, if they do indeed want to take an opportunity on Fields or Lance. And now we have the Patriots at pick 15, and not their biggest need here necessarily, but the Cam Newton deal is 1 year for a reason. And I think with Lance still being here on the board, the Patriots take advantage. So I think the Patriots go with Trey Lance, the quarterback out of North Dakota State. Next, we have the Cardinals. And I had the Cardinals taking Travis Etienne in my last mock because I did mention that I'm not quite sure which running back the Cardinals will want. I think they'll go with Najee Harris, the running back at Alabama. Hard to tell which running back they'll go with, but I guarantee the Cardinals go with the running back here, especially with Kenyon Drake going to the Raiders and Chase Edmonds. I really don't see him being an RB1 in Arizona. I think the Cardinals, they really need a 3-down back, and I think Najee Harris, I think he can fit that bill nicely in Arizona. Next, we got the Raiders at 17, and I think the Raiders are going to go offensive tackle here. I think they will go with Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame. We always see these prospects that could be considered reaches, but it could be worth it. I mean, we've seen this a couple of times with offensive tackles. We've seen the better ones that we're high on go into the early second round, and we see some that we don't really think of going the first round. And this could be one of the situations here with Liam Eichenberg. Notre Dame had one of the best offensive lines in college football last season. And Liam Eichenberg was a part of that offensive line that propelled Notre Dame to the college football playoff. Honestly, not that they deserve to be in the playoff to begin with, but still, that's another story for another day. Next, we got the Dolphins at pick 18. And I think they're going to address defense here. And I think they're going to go with one of their bigger needs. Because I think that the Dolphins, they may invest in a wide receiver in maybe the second round. But I think the Dolphins with Kwity Paye, the edge rusher out of Michigan. Kwity Paye, I think, has top 10 talent. And the fact that Kwity Paye is at pick 18, I think this would be a solid pickup for the Dolphins. A Dolphins team that really struggled on defense against Buffalo. And when you got to try to compete with your biggest competition within your division, I think it's best to look at some defensive prospects. So now we have the Washington football team at pick 19. And I think that they will focus on their offensive line because that's their biggest issue right now. I do think, however, if Lance or Fields were still on the board, they would take their chance. But I think they would be more interested in Trey Lance. You know, I could see the Washington football team be trading up, depending on if we see Lance fall, because I don't know if the Washington football team wants another Ohio State quarterback when it didn't work out with Haskins. So I think they're going to go with Tevin Jenkins, the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma State. And next we have the Bears. The Bears, they have their supposed QB1 in Andy Dalton. So I think they're going to improve their offensive line. And I think they're going to go with Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC. This improves a struggling Bears offensive line. Next, we've got the Colts. And I think the Colts, they are going to go with Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. I just think it's best to give Carson Wentz as many targets as possible. And Bateman, he opted out of the 2020 season. He played a couple games, but he decided to opt out in the middle of the season. And I think that Bateman, I think he's top 10 talent as well. I think he's just overshadowed by the big three in Chase, Smith, and Waddle. But I think Bateman, he's got potential to be a star receiver in the National Football League. Next, we've got the Titans. And I think this is going to be one of those things where you address a big need. I think they're going to go with Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech. Now, Farley, I've had Farley in the top 10 in recent mock drafts, and the fact he's falling in these mock drafts and how he could fall on draft night, I think the Titans, they'll get a steal in Caleb Farley. Next, we have the Jets, and I think the Jets, I think the thing here for the Jets is to, with Robert Saleh being a defensive guy, I think he would want to address the edge. So I think I'm going to go with Jalen Phillips out of Miami. I could see it being Aziz Ajalara. I could see it being him as well. But I just think that Robert Saleh wants to improve within that front seven for the Jets. And I think Jalen Phillips, really talented player. He started his career at UCLA and ended in Miami. Next, we have the Steelers at 24. And I think that they will want to address their offensive line. So I'm going to go with Samuel Cosmi out of Texas. Although I could see Cosmi I could see him going maybe early second round. Because there has been some comments on how Cosme isn't worthy of being taken the first round. So I could see him being taken in the early second, possibly at 35 to Atlanta if he doesn't get taken in the first round. And now we have the Jaguars in the clock, and I think you're going to want to give Trevor Lawrence a target here. So Terrace Marshall Jr., the wide receiver out of LSU. Terrace Marshall was a receiver that opted out of the season at LSU, but before that, he was dominating the stat charts. And he was dominant in 2019. He was just overshadowed. He just didn't get noticed as much because he was with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. So Terrace Marshall, he didn't really get the attention that I felt like he deserved in 2019. But he did well in 2020 in the games he played, but he did opt out in the middle of the season. Next, we got the Browns. And the Browns, they could be a couple pieces away from being legitimate contenders. So I think the Browns, they're going to go with Azeez Ojulari, the edge rusher out of Georgia. I just think that this would be a big pick for the Browns here. You get somebody to pair with Myles Garrett, because Myles Garrett, one of the better defensive players in the league. In fact, in my mind, I'd say top 5 defensive players in the league. Next, we got the Ravens. And I think the Ravens, they're going to go with Trevon Moehrig, the safety out of TCU. Maybe not an exciting pick here for the Ravens, but the reason why the Ravens do so well in drafts is because they get the better players available when they're on the clock. And I think that's going to apply here. Next, we got the Saints. And I think the Saints are going to go with a corner. I think they're going to go with Eric Stokes out of Georgia. A compliment to Marshawn. So now we have the Packers on the clock. And I am going to say the Packers go with a wide receiver here. I think they're going to go with Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Because the Packers, they had the opportunity to trade for Will Fuller at the trade deadline last season, but they didn't do that. They didn't do so. And there was a comment in my recent mock draft that I looked at, and they said that Toney was not going to be, he wasn't going to be left on the board if the Packers had the opportunity. So I have them going with Toney here at 29. So I took that into consideration. Because I think Kadarius Toney, I think his comparison is Randall Cobb. And I can see what that commenter was saying on why they needed wide receiver help. Next, we got the Bills. And I think the Bills, they just go with an edge here. I think they go with Gregory Rousseau out of Miami. I just think the Bills, with them only needing a few more pieces, really compete. Because the Bills, we saw them compete really well last season. And it's just that the Chiefs, I think, in my mind, are the Bills' kryptonite. I think you just got to find the prospects that you can find yourself with a chance of beating Kansas City. Now we have the Chiefs on the clock. And I think the Chiefs, this pick may seem like a reach, but it makes a whole lot of sense. Jalen Radunz, the offensive tackle of North Dakota State. Now, Radunz, I think, could be more of a second rounder. But with the Chiefs picking so late in the later rounds, I think they take an opportunity to go with one of the top tackles in this draft class in Dylan Radunz. Really underrated prospect, mainly because of the competition he played, being from North Dakota State, only playing FCS level competition. I think this would be a solid pickup for the Chiefs. And now we have the Buccaneers on the clock. And I really think that I think that Tom Brady will dictate somewhat what this pick will be. And I think Brady will want a target. I think this pick seems like a reach as well, but it'll make a whole lot of sense when you think about it. Elijah Moore, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. And right now it's mainly because the Bucs, they haven't re-signed AB yet. And this could be just in case they don't re-sign AB. Even if they do re-sign AB, I still think that Brady would want another wide receiver on his roster, another target to throw to. So that wraps up my sixth mock draft of the mock draft season. Let me know if you want round 2. I am really considering doing a second round of this mock draft. So let me know if you'd like to see it. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time.